My name is Rachel Bennett. I'm 38 years old, and I didn't find out my husband stopped trusting me through a message or a confession. I found out while taking out the trash. Because tucked between an empty cereal box and coffee grounds, I saw a shipping label from a DNA testing company. At first, I thought it was junk mail, but then I noticed something that made my hands go cold. Two names written in black marker: Ethan, Lily. My children. And when I pulled the box out, it had already been used, already sealed, already mailed. My husband hadn't asked me anything. He hadn't mentioned doubts. He hadn't even looked worried. He had simply tested our children behind my back and waited quietly for the results. And when those results came back, they didn't change our family. But what he had done changed everything between us. We had been married 11 years, the kind of marriage that looked stable from the outside. A quiet neighborhood outside Arlington, Virginia, 2 kids, predictable routines, and the comfortable rhythm that comes when people stop expecting surprises. And if you had asked me a week earlier whether Daniel trusted me, I would have said yes, without hesitation. Because trust wasn't something I actively thought about anymore. It was something I assumed existed, the same way you assume your house will still be standing when you come home. Until that afternoon, when I saw the shipping label in the recycling bin. And I remember pulling it free slowly, my heart already racing before my mind had fully processed what I was holding. Because I recognized the company immediately, one of those popular at-home DNA testing services. And I tried to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe ancestry research, maybe something medical, maybe anything except suspicion. But when I opened the box and saw 2 plastic swabs labeled Ethan and Lily in black marker, something inside my chest tightened immediately. Because suddenly, small moments from the past few weeks began rearranging themselves into something darker. Daniel brushing Ethan's hair aside longer than usual while helping him with homework. Daniel asking Lily about her eye color during dinner. Daniel quietly studying old family photos late at night. And at the time, I thought he was just reminiscing. But now I realized he had been comparing, measuring, searching for something he hadn't told me about. And I sat down at the kitchen table with the box in front of me, staring at it for a long time. Because confronting him meant acknowledging something I wasn't ready to accept, that my husband had looked at our children and wondered whether they were his. And when Daniel came home that evening, he greeted me the same way he always did, a quick kiss, a tired smile, asking what was for dinner. And I watched him carefully, noticing how normal he sounded, how calm he looked. And that calmness felt worse than anger, because it meant he had already made peace with his suspicion, already decided to test our children quietly, already chosen doubt over conversation. And I kept waiting for him to mention something, anything, but he didn't. And during dinner, he asked Ethan about school, reminded Lily about her homework, laughed at something on television, and I realized he had created a quiet version of our life where his suspicion existed without me knowing. And that realization felt colder than any argument, because it meant he had been living beside me while quietly questioning me. And later that night, when he fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room replaying the last few weeks, noticing how carefully he had hidden everything, how methodical it had been, how deliberate. And that was when I understood the part that hurt the most. This wasn't a moment of panic or emotional reaction. This was a quiet, calculated decision. He ordered the test, waited for the swabs, collected samples from our children, packaged them carefully, mailed them, and then returned to our normal life as if nothing had happened. And as I sat there in the quiet house, listening to the faint sound of the dishwasher running in the kitchen, I realized something that unsettled me more than the test itself. The results hadn't even arrived yet, but the damage had already begun. Because trust doesn't collapse loudly, it collapses quietly in small, hidden decisions that change how 2 people see each other forever. And 2 days later, when Daniel left his laptop open on the dining table and I saw the notification appear on the screen, I knew the moment I had been dreading had finally arrived. If you think the results brought relief, they didn't, because what I saw next changed something even deeper between us. Because sometimes the most painful betrayals don't start with arguments. They start with quiet doubts you never knew existed. And 2 days later, when I saw the email notification appear, I realized this story was about to get much worse. If you've ever trusted someone completely, stay with me, because what I discovered next changed how I saw my husband forever. And if this story is pulling you in, follow or subscribe, because the next gets even more unsettling. The email sat at the top of Daniel's screen, simple and clinical, DNA results ready. And I stood there staring at it for several seconds because opening it felt like crossing a line. But then I remembered the box in the recycling bin, the names written in black marker, and the quiet suspicion he had carried without telling me. And in that moment, I clicked the email, and the report loaded slowly, percentages and technical language appearing on the screen, and I scanned quickly until my eyes found what mattered most: confirmed biological father, confirmed biological father, confirmed biological father. And for a moment, I just stared at those words, expecting relief, expecting my shoulders to relax, expecting something to ease inside me. But instead, I felt hollow, because the results didn't erase what he had done. They didn't erase the quiet suspicion. They didn't erase the fact that he had tested our children behind my back. And when Daniel walked back inside and saw me standing at the table, his expression changed instantly, his eyes flicking from the screen to my face. And the silence between us stretched longer than any argument we had ever had. And finally, he exhaled slowly and said, "I was going to tell you." And those words hurt more than the test itself, because they sounded like something he had prepared for himself, something he planned to say only if he got caught. And I asked him why, and he hesitated before admitting that a few weeks earlier, during a family gathering, his brother had joked that Ethan didn't resemble him, and he laughed it off at the time. But later that night, he started noticing small differences: the shape of Ethan's nose, Lily's smile, the color of their eyes. And once the thought entered his mind, he couldn't let it go. And he told me he felt ashamed for even thinking it, which was why he didn't ask me directly, because asking would make the doubt real. And instead, he ordered the test quietly, convincing himself it would just reassure him and no one would ever know. And as he spoke, I realized something painful, because his explanation sounded small compared to what he had done. A casual joke had turned into a secret test. And I asked him why he didn't trust me enough to talk first, and he didn't answer immediately. He just looked down at the table, and that silence told me everything, because sometimes the absence of an answer reveals more than words ever could. And in that moment, I realized something that stayed with me long after the conversation ended. The results confirmed he was their father, but they also confirmed something else: that when doubt entered his mind, he trusted suspicion more than the person he had built a life with. And that realization didn't explode into anger. It settled quietly between us, heavier than shouting, heavier than accusations. And later that night, after Daniel went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, replaying the past 11 years, trying to understand how doubt had grown quietly between us. And that was when I remembered something Daniel hadn't. Because the test didn't just reveal his suspicion, it revealed something he had chosen not to remember. That night, the house felt unusually quiet. The kind of silence that settles after something changes but no one says it out loud. And I sat on the couch replaying the past 11 years, trying to understand how suspicion had taken root so quietly. And then I remembered something from years earlier, something that made my stomach tighten. Because when Ethan was born, Daniel and I had gone through months of fertility testing, difficult conversations, and doctor visits that slowly changed how we imagined our future. And eventually, we were told Daniel's fertility was extremely low. And I still remember sitting in that sterile office while the doctor explained our options: adoption, treatment, or donor-assisted conception. And Daniel had been the one who reached for my hand first, the one who told me quietly that family wasn't defined by biology. And after weeks of discussion, we made the decision together, something deeply private, something Daniel insisted we never tell anyone. And over the years, that decision faded into the background as life moved forward. School schedules, birthdays, vacations, and I realized that somewhere along the way, Daniel had stopped thinking about that chapter entirely. And I went upstairs, opened the drawer where we kept our family records, and found the old paperwork. And when I placed the document in front of him the next morning, he looked confused at first. Then his expression changed slowly as recognition returned, and he read the words carefully. Donor-assisted conception documented. And I watched his shoulders drop as the memory settled back into place, and he sat down quietly, running his hand across his face, and whispered, "I didn't even think about it." And those words landed heavier than any accusation, because his suspicion hadn't just questioned my loyalty, it had ignored one of the hardest decisions we had ever made together. And in that moment, I realized something that stayed with me long after the conversation ended. The DNA test hadn't changed our family, the results hadn't changed our children, but the fact that Daniel trusted doubt over shared history changed how I saw him forever. And sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't cheating. It's when someone quietly decides you're capable of it without ever asking you first. And as Daniel sat there silently, staring at the document, I realized something else. Trust doesn't disappear all at once. It fades slowly in small moments where doubt becomes louder than memory. And even when the truth returns, something between you has already shifted, quietly, permanently, in a way neither of you fully knows how to repair.